Good day, everybody. Welcome to Testify, July 29th, 2022. Thank you. Today, we're going to be talking about music composition and videography in the Christian church. Without further ado, I would like to welcome you all and ask Pastor Dwight to start us off with a prayer.
Let's bow. Father, we thank you for grace, mercy, and peace. Thank you for the occasion. Thank you for the space and the place. Thank you for creativity. You are the most creative person that we can ever make contact with. You are creator. And so every element of creativity comes from you. And so, Father, we thank you for that. Thank you for infusing us with the joy of creativity, whether it's with music, whether it's with songwriting, whether it's with art, whether it's with poetry. We give your name praise. And as we spend a moment tonight just basking in this reservoir of creativity, we pray that your name gets the glory and honor. We'll be mindful to give it to you because you're due it. Thank you for the evening. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks a lot, Pastor Dwight. I appreciate it. We're kind of few in number today, but I want you to pay attention. Today, we have two guests today. And the first guest is not here. He does not live in the Bahamas. He used to, because we used to be childhood friends. But he is actually going to be talking about music. He is a composer. He has many degrees, actually. And he is probably one of the coolest people I know. We're going to be talking today with David Ernich, who is a composer, and he is going to show you who he is and what he does. And so without further ado, let's show you his stuff. David, thank you so much for joining us today at Testify. I really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. My pleasure to join you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Great. I'm really looking forward to doing this because we haven't had a composer before. There's so many different art forms out there, and that's what we aim to explore, So I guess I'm going to get right into it. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a composer? When did you realize that was a vocation for you?
Yeah, good question. So I think I started out as a musician on the piano, um, but a lot of what I did, even when I was young, was improvising. And
Mhm,
I think a lot of I don't think improvisation and composition are the same thing, but there are a lot
mhm,
of transferable um, processes, skills, techniques. So that was probably my first leaning in that direction, even when I was, in primary school.
mhm,
Um, when I was in high school, so I moved to the UK from the Bahamas at the end of primary school and started high school in the UK. And as,
mhm,
as I got into um, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the UK system, but GCSE and A level is your
mhm,
top of your uh, high school over here. So as I was getting towards kind of GCSE and moving into A level, I was doing a lot more, proper composition
mhm.
and starting to, you know, not just improvise things, but write them down, start to refine things and go over things. Yeah, and then I wrote a piece called The Butterfly, which was when I was 15, 16, which won a prize in the BBC Young Composer of the Year. Um, and at that point, I was like, okay, so maybe this actually has some mileage because it's not just me that's kind of authenticating what I'm doing in terms of composition.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then at university, my undergrad was in music, but
Mhm.
again, the direction was towards composition. So by the third year of my undergrad degree, I was pretty much taking all the courses that were available that were in either composition or performance, and the ones that weren't was kind of supporting supporting those interests.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So, would you say that your journey into music as a whole, do you think that just is something that you just naturally went toward, or were there people in your life who kind of said, this guy has talent, let me steer him toward that? How would you describe that?
Well, I mean, going back to the Bahamas again, so yeah, there were people, one of whom is your dad, by the way.
That's-
So the the kind of gospel keyboardist and the
Mhm,
kind of rich, lush chords and some of those movements, that was
mhm.
always like, huh, I really like the sound of that. What is that? Try and go home and work it out. I mean, I couldn't at that age, but
Yeah.
trying. Um, Part of it was my dad. So he's
Mhm,
from a very musical family who I've now all kind of met and spent quite a lot of time with in the UK. So his brother was a concert pianist for many years. Piano concertos with orchestras and this sort of thing.
mhm.
Um, all of his sisters, sorry, both of his sisters are musical.
Uh-huh.
Um, he was in various bands. So, yeah, I mean, listening to music in the home was quite normal. Listening to music on the radio was very frequent.
Mhm.
Um, Seeing my dad involved in music, with bands, with gospel bands at church, in free time, that was very um, just kind of the air that I breathed, really.
Ah.
Um, and then I started piano lessons when I was very young, about age 4. Um,
Mhm.
and I think uh, that there was a time when I had to be compelled to practice. So that there are
Yeah.
many hours of my dad's life that just spent making sure I did my half an hour a day. But
Mm.
but actually, at quite a young age, it got to the point where I was just doing that independently. And I remember one particular Sunday um, that I was trying an F sharp major scale, hands together, 4 octaves. You can see how
Mhm.
you'll see why I remember that. And
Yeah.
dad was sitting with me, and this might have been the last time he sat with me, and I just kept getting it wrong. I just couldn't get it right perfectly, and
Mhm.
eventually I was just like, you know what? No, I'm going to do this right, and I'm not stopping until I get it right. And
Uh-huh.
Dad actually left at one point because he was like, right, just leave him to it because he's obviously going to
Hmm.
go at this. And I stayed there for about another hour, hour and a half. You know,
Really?
when you're 7 or 8, that's quite a big proportion of your life, I guess.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I was like, I am going to get this. So there came a
Wow.
point where, yeah, I had been steered into it, but then I was like, um, yeah, I want to do this myself. So
Okay.
that's my example.
Okay. So it's a little bit of both then. Oh, nice. That's great.
Yeah.
So what genres, I know you do a whole lot of different things. Could you just let us know what kind of genres you currently work in?
I suppose in terms of like genres and styles, it would be classical, jazz, and gospel.
Okay.
Um, so that's the quick answer. But I guess in terms of what I do as a professional musician, are you kind of angling that way as well?
I wasn't, but yes, please let us know.
um, so I mean, I make my career from music exclusively, and
Mhm.
that's partly because I think it's a vocation.
Mm,
Um, but it's made up of a portfolio basically of there's some teaching at all sorts of levels from primary school to postgraduate.
mhm,
There's performance, there's composition. Um, so yeah, those kind of areas manifest themselves, and those different styles, classical, jazz, and gospel, manifest themselves.
mhm.
Um, you know, in various different ways, and although I do lots of different things, I guess all together it adds up to probably something like a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. But it only adds up to that. It doesn't work out like that in a week.
Yeah, it didn't sound so. It sounds like your life is very varied. Every day is something
Yeah,
different.
definitely.
Yes, wow. So then, because your career is so varied in what you do every single day, when it comes to actually creating a piece, um, what's your process? Can you describe
Oh,
what that's like? 'Cause I'm sure that's interesting.
yeah, that's a very important question for me. So I think my compos compositional process used to be pretty
Mm,
much improvise at the piano. Oh, I like the sound of that one. Right, let's try and write that down.
mm,
Um, which, when it worked, was great, but the problem was it didn't work a lot of the time. So the kind of improv and trial and error and notate from that yeah, I found that I had so-called writer's block a lot. I
mhm,
found that
mhm.
um, I found that I because I had quite a uh, quite a high threshold for what I thought would be acceptable. You know, the
Oh,
quality control was
mhm,
always like, oh, that's not good enough, but I couldn't really necessarily work out why. Um,
mhm,
so it was really when I did my PhD in composition. So this is in Manchester. Um, what was that? The early 2000s, and I finished in 2013, something like that. Um, I I I feel like that was the point where I really got some process and some technique and some methodology,
mhm,
um, and just learning things like the, you can actually be taught composition. You can
mhm,
actually um, quantify some of the aspects. It's not all qualitative. Um,
mhm,
there is a lot of value to be found in working away from the piano. Um,
mhm.
and I remember with my PhD supervisor, I spent the first year kind of in kind of diagnosis of actually the piano is probably a problem for you. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm an accomplished pianist. I improvise a lot. That's what I use.
Mhm.
So that was like, this is weird. But it was good advice. And I spent basically the first year of my PhD learning to write away from the piano, um,
Mm,
learning to research a little bit more
mhm,
thoroughly, um, learning to. I know that analysis is sometimes a bit of um, a scary word, and doesn't that stifle creativity, or doesn't it?
Hmm.
At least, isn't it the opposite of spontaneity? But I've not actually found that. It's I think both and is much better, and analysis and spontaneity,
Hmm.
kind of working together, have been much more helpful. Um, and just techniques, techniques for extension and development, like
Hmm.
inversion and retrograde and sequence, and
Hmm.
just actually pure repetition and re-instrumentation, reorchestration, um, elision. I'm just off the top of my head, fragmentation, liquidation. All of these sorts of things, which actually are just super, super, super useful, and you can see
Hmm.
them in everything from Beethoven to a Christian song. When
Hmm.
they're good and when they're catchy, you can see these techniques.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that yeah, that's the longer answer to the question.
Okay. So then the art of composition then is a marriage, would you say, between um, just the creative, like, oh, I like this sound, I like this process, and um, a, oh, how would I say? I wouldn't say rigorous, but there's an academic kind of portion to it as well, would you say?
Yeah, and I'm happy with the word rigorous. I mean,
Hmm.
I think for me, it's not so much about throwing away that quality control and that desire for. Actually, that sounds really good. That's really grabbing me. Um,
Hmm.
the question is how. What is the best way for me to reliably get there? Because what I was
Hmm.
finding was I'm only getting there 0.5% of the time.
Hmm.
A 95.5%, sorry, maths, goodness me, 99.5% fail rate
Uh-huh.
is that's just I can't work like that.
Right.
And I wouldn't say it's gone the other way, but I'd say I'm maybe at a 30% success rate,
Hmm.
and that's quite good because I don't know, if you spend 3 days composing, that means you're going to get one good day, and actually you can get a lot done if you get one good day. So
Hmm.
it's about, yeah, it's about getting to that point of, yeah, this is really grabbing me, and being able to understand why it's grabbing you, and then being able to actually
Hmm.
replicate that, being able actually to equip other people. So I mean, I said a lot of what I do is education.
Hmm.
um, Being able to essentially fast track younger composers past what I had to go through. So I
Ah.
don't I don't want them to sit there as, young talented composers who have that kind of sense of, what's worthwhile and what's good and what's quality, and they want to write it,
Hmm.
but they've got no way to actually realize their ideas and make more of them, and they're just, most of the time, they're kind of sitting there and not knowing what to do. I don't want other people to go through that. um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
how do we get them there?
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. Um, so I think you've talked a lot about my other question, which was going to be what are the biggest challenges that you have faced as the composer? But do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, um, I think learning to be less precious about what you write.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, after my undergrad, I did a postgrad, like a single year master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, just learning to throw stuff away, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good, and not necessarily to obsess and to write quickly. That was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and learning that actually the feedback of other people, even when it's something that you don't want to hear, when it's something that means you're going to have to go back and work on that bit again, even though you've already been with it, um, learning that sometimes the thing that you think is quite good, actually, if that's not transferable and it's not also grabbing other people,
Mm,
you've got to be a little bit careful because maybe they just don't like it. Okay, well, you can take that with a pinch of salt. But if I think if they're following that up with, yeah, but it's not working because, and they can
mhm,
actually, you know, put some flesh on the bones of the critique. I think learning to listen at that point is so valuable because you learn
mm,
something and actually you probably produce something better out of it, and it's a worthwhile process. It's going to make you a better composer. So
mm.
so yeah, that's a big challenge. Learning to let go of certain things and
Yeah.
um, learning that becoming a good composer. I don't really like that term. Becoming a better composer is
Mhm.
really the aim. You're always aiming for better and better and better, and it takes critique to get there. Yeah,
Good,
that's a challenge.
good, good stuff. So my next question, because you also work very closely with the church. So I guess some of your stuff is more academic, academic secular, and but you also work a lot in the church. One of the things that I think about when I think about I want to say the Christian music industry, but the music of the church. We have a lot of different styles, but I think that sometimes we get these boxes, right? Particular genres, particular ways of thinking, etc. And I think a lot of what you do is kind of outside of that box. But specifically, the role of the composer in Christian music, music of the church. Could you talk a little bit about that? What do you want your music to accomplish?
It started with genre and style, so I think it would be a good thing for um, a composer to think about pastiche composition.
Could
Um,
you describe that a little bit? Because I don't think a lot of us are familiar with the term
Yeah,
pastiche.
so pastiche means you're trying to you're consciously, deliberately trying to imitate a particular style. So you could
Ah,
have pastiche composition in the style of Beethoven, or
mm,
in the style of Debussy, or in the style of a hymn. Can you write
mm,
a hymn? And a lot of them is that would be pastiche in the style of Bach chorales. Can you actually do that? That's an important part of the Christian tradition. It's good to have that within your toolkit of things to be able to do.
yeah.
Um, what else is Hillsong? That's
Mm-hmm,
pretty popular. Can you write a song in the style of Hillsong?
mm-hmm,
Choose, go through and see what's popular. Try and work out, okay, what are the 5, 10 most popular genres? Can you actually write consciously, deliberately in those genres? Because what that will teach you is what are the characteristics of those genres? How are they different? What skills am I learning? Um, one of them will be better maybe for melody, one of them will be better for chords, or maybe more deep than that, the interaction between the melody and chords will be different in different
mm-hmm,
genres, or maybe the harmonic language will be different in different genres. um, the relative rhythmic complexity will be different in different genres. Can you actually cover all of those things?
mm-hmm.
Because if you want to be a Christian composer, you don't know what opportunity might present itself. So what you want to be
True.
is ready. And
Mm-hmm,
this gets on, I think, to what I think um, that the role is. The role is to serve the church. So,
mm-hmm,
um, like the New Testament says in lots of places, we all have different giftings.
mm-hmm,
So if you feel like your vocation is music, and within that you feel like your gifting is composition, well, part of fanning that gift into flame is can you actually cover some of these things um, that have been useful to the church?
awesome. Okay, so my last question before I wrap up, because this has been really good. This has been very good.
Right, I'm
Um,
glad.
so I have spent a lot of time thinking about music in general. I know that there is, a Christian music industry. Um, and we see some things sometimes we don't. That's I personally am not pleased by, or I get the sense that commercialism sometimes uh, supersedes authenticity. Um, Sometimes that's maybe it's just, but I just wanted to know along those veins, in Christian music currently, whether it's the industry itself or just just music in the church in general, is there anything that you are concerned about, or is there anything that you are encouraged by?
Yeah, good questions. I certainly would be concerned about commercialism on its own. Um, I just need to be slightly cautious here because I haven't been, for example, in charge of a music label,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, and I'm not kind of signing people. I don't know what that involves, so I have to speak
Mhm.
a little bit theoretically. But I
Mhm.
think I would, let's put it this way. I think I would be concerned if, um, on the one hand, a Christian label didn't run themselves as a business. It is a business. They
Mhm.
do have staff to pay. They do need to be good at promoting people. They do have to make
Mhm.
decisions about who to
Mhm.
promote and who not to promote. You've got to actually not just be Christian, but if it's a business, it's a Christian business. I
Yeah.
would equally be concerned on the other side if the commercialism takes over,
Mhm.
and I don't know if it's just about the formula that works. Okay, we
Mhm.
have this and this is popular and it's kind of easy to put stuff out. Well, great. And actually maybe praise the Lord to a point. But
Mhm.
if that then prevents, I was talking about a variety in the diet of the church.
Mhm.
If that gets to the point where actually there's topics that we're missing, there's styles that
Mhm.
we're missing, there's
Mhm.
talented people who God has given gifts who are not
Mhm.
having the opportunity to, um, have their blessing spread out to the maximum number of people because it's just about commercialism. I think that would then become a problem for
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
So again, I I've not been involved in the industry
Mhm.
in that way, so I don't know where the sweet spot is where you do both, but it seems godly to me to strive for um, both
Mhm.
sides of that. Um, I suppose I suppose maybe I can speak into what it's like in kind of trying to get into that. And
Mhm.
the fact is, it's hard. I think to an extent, I'm okay with that. I think realistically, if you want to get to the point where you're getting signed and you want tens of millions of people to listen to your music, I think there's a certain amount of, well, manage your expectations, because
Mhm.
if if it's not really really good, actually, why should tens of millions of people listen to it? And what's it going
Mhm.
to take to get to the point where you're really really good? um,
Mhm.
so I think part of it being difficult should just be the way things are. How could it be otherwise?
Mhm.
But I think if it's difficult purely because you've done the work, you're working with integrity, you are, um, you're you're pretty sure in terms of like an intersubjective analysis. You've spoken to lots of different kinds of people, and there's broad assent that the music is saying something and it's worthwhile,
Mhm.
and then you don't get signed. I think that kind of difficulty is then not on you, and I think you could have peace about that,
Mhm.
and say, um, well, what are some other ways I might get my music out there if the label
Mhm.
thing is not working for that reason. and I would pray about it. I would seek some
Mm,
wisdom of other Christians. Um, so yeah, I think there are problems in the Christian music industry, and I think
mm,
those problems come when we're not thinking about the kind of core aims of what we're trying to do, like
mhm,
providing the church with um, diverse vehicles which you know can glorify God, uh, and in such a way that we're not getting sucked into commercialism, and we're not
mm,
getting sucked into low quality
mm.
on the other hand.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So would you like to add anything that anything else that you would like to say or close out with? But also, do you see anything that encourages you within Christian music today?
Oh yeah, that was the other that was
Mm-hmm.
the other part of the question. Um, I don't know that there's anything extra I want to add. um, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of encouragements. I could maybe give some examples. So one thing I find really encouraging is working with others. I think I've
Mhm.
learnt to co-write over the
Mm,
past 10 years, which has been quite a journey for me. And I talked about being precious about my stuff before. Um, but yeah, co-writing has been quite yeah, I would say quite a big part of my sanctification actually,
mhm.
as a growing Christian musician. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I think another thing I found encouraging is um, that music seems to be, if you keep putting the time in
Mhm.
and the work in, it keeps seeming to reward you. Um,
Mm,
it's very. I'd be interested to know if that's the experience of others, but it um, the use of music in the praise of God seems to be
mhm.
a deep well which I, I haven't found the bottom of yet, and it's
Mhm.
quite. I feel like it's quite rare in life to find lots of things where you can keep going deeper and keep going deeper and keep going deeper, and things just keep getting better and keep getting more
Mhm.
interesting and keep becoming more compelling and keep becoming more worthwhile. I mean, how
Mhm.
many things can you say that of? And I've I found that to be the case um, with music generally,
Mhm.
and certainly in particular with music in praise of God. So um, yeah, if that's your if that's your experience as well, um,
Mhm.
keep yeah keep trying to discover deeper depths,
Mhm.
and yeah, I hope that's I hope that's not just me.
That is actually a great way to end it because I guess that's partly how you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Hmm. So I think we are out of time because we could go on for hours, I'm sure. But thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Happy to do it again at some point, and yeah, hope hope all your listeners and viewers have found it useful.
I'm sure. Okay. Thanks a lot, David.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. David, Dr. David Ernitay. I forgot to ask him, but yes. Um, Keep in mind, I'd like to add that that wasn't the entire video. Um, we actually have an extended version, which will also be put on the Testify Facebook page. I guess for persons who are very, very interested in, want to go a little bit deeper in his response to some of the questions about music in the church, etc. If you are especially a musician, or at least interested in being a musician. So yes, that concludes that section, and I'm really glad. And what I took away from it is that a lot of what he is saying applies to so many other art forms that we experience, visual art, um, the fashion industry. There are certain things that we just have to keep at it, especially if you find that it's pulling you, it's driving you. Most likely that's something that God is calling you into, for his glory. And David does it very well. So I'd like to say thanks again, and it would be great to have you back on the show sometime. All right, so our next guest is a videographer. And you can tell me if I'm saying it wrong, if I have it, if I'll give you a chance to do that. But the video that we saw last Testify, with Clanisha Miller, he is the guy who put it together. And I actually had to say, when
No.
I saw the video, no, you're not? No, that's what they told me. Whatever, he's still a great videographer.
or maybe I did. I don't know. I do so much.
I think it's the one that says, I think it's gonna be all right.
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay, good.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that was a long time.
I saw it and I said, I want to talk to that person because they think outside the box. And that is kind of why we have Testify in the first place, just to introduce people to what else is out there, how people are thinking differently and, expressing themselves in ways that aren't, I wouldn't say common. Yeah, but, people who think outside the box. And so I am, please join me in welcoming Mr. Emmanuel Petithomme. I pronounced it right?
Yes. Petithomme, no problem.
Good, okay, wonderful. And I said, excuse me, that we would share some of stuff that he does, which now, when I see some of these images, there's no sound today, that's okay. When I just think, oh, that's somebody from, somebody, an international firm or something like that. But you notice that everything here, pretty much everything here looks like it was done in the Bahamas, and you better believe it was done by a local. And I really appreciate him coming to this, to our little get together today, Mr. Emmanuel Petithomme, sorry. Stop talking. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes. Now I'm going to try and multitask and get rid of a lot of these things so everybody can see us very well. Okay. And so can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? How did you get interested in videography? What did it take to get you where you are today?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I had a rough upbringing, I would say. Kind of like jumping into homes and stuff like that with my parents. We had a hard time. So a television was something we didn't have the luxury of. So we usually climb on top of walls to watch through the window of a neighbor and see their television. And I always used to be like, how did they fit humans inside this box? You're small, so you think people is actually in this box, and that always baffled me. And I was like, one day I want to do that. I want to fit somebody inside the box, and it continued to grow. And as I grew and got wiser and realized it wasn't people inside the box, It was just recorded and aired on TV. I wanted to do it for myself. Like I say, unfortunately, because of the hard upbringing, didn't have no cash to go off to school to do stuff like that. But thank God, YouTube University came on, and I went to YouTube University to get my doctorate, bachelor's, and whatever degree I needed. And I started doing my own thing. Knowledge is out there. I feel like knowledge is free nowadays. You just gotta, don't be lazy. If you want to know something, just type it and apply yourself, and you can get it. Like Miles Monroe says, going to college is just going to a school where a teacher will tell you, buy a book to read. And I might as well just buy the book, So after getting that encouragement from Miles Monroe, I applied myself, and here I am.
How long have you been in the videography? How long have you been doing this?
I think I was dabbling in it for about 6 years, but full time now, 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Wow. So how did you get your start in it? Do you just do projects for random people, or?
Well, I met this guy named Neville Smith. He was on Facebook, and he asked for help with doing a commercial for the KFC brand. And I was so excited. I had some new gears, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring my gear. I'm going to show off. I'm going to do my best. And when I reached on set, this guy had the works. He had a big camera and set up with lights. So I left all my gear in the car. And I was like, no way. I don't know what to do. And he was telling me, grab this, and saying all the different terms for it. And I was so lost, like, what is he talking about, And his assistant, Glenn Ferguson, he actually assists me a lot with knowing what the terms are and stuff like that. And I end up doing the commercial for him, and he loved my personality, and he continued to call me. And one day he asked me if I could edit. Of course, I didn't know how to edit, but I said yes. And I went on YouTube and learned within 2 days how to edit. And he gave me a project just to try it out. And he loved it. So while I was working my 9 to 5, he called me partially and paid me to edit for him. But I wanted to do my own thing when it comes to producing. So one day I wouldn't want to say fire me, but he pushed me off the nest. He was like, Emmanuel, you're too good, and you're gonna leave me one day. So I rather push you off before you push me off. And I was angry at him. I didn't believe him, but he saw a potential in me that I could have made my own business. But I wanted that security in him, knowing that he's already established and I'm getting paid from him. So I wanted that security. But he was like, nope, you're going to get too good and you're going to leave. Trust me. And today he's still one of my best mentor. And he teach me everything I know now. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's cool. One question I realized I forgot to ask you is, what exactly is videography? You can tell like me, who don't really know these things.
Well, videography is basically what you see, right? Your eyes right now is your camera.
Mm-hmm.
But what videography does is take visuals and make story, and that's kind of the brain of videography. So your eyes could see something, which is the camera, but your brain could make up the concept. There's a famous song that says, I see mommy kissing Santa Claus. And it took me until 25 years old to realize that was his father. So I was like, why was mom kissing Santa Claus? She's cheating. But see, your brain creates that story. So video is literally the camera grabbing visuals and allowing your brain to create a story, whatever it may be.
Wow. I don't think I ever really thought about it like that. I thought it was just people, you know, I thought it was mostly the best way to take shots and stuff like that. I didn't really
No.
think about my participation in what I saw on TV or in movies and
Mhm.
whatnot. I think that that is okay. I have another question that's developing in the back of my head. I will get back to that later because that's actually pretty deep. I think that speaks a lot to I was thinking about the power of the image.
Mhm.
You know, especially you know, back in the day when I was growing up, you kind of glimpsed past like BET and stuff like that. And I was like,
Right.
hey, those women running around without wearing much anything. You know, why are they standing like that? Why are they posing like that? And I'm realizing now that you say it, you know, it's
Mhm.
an interpretation of an image that we're seeing. And I think that has intense power, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. And that's what we sell. The interpretation of the images is best sell than the visual itself, because you got millionaires who
Mhm.
have bad visuals, but you love the story. You
Mm.
know, so yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, what would you say is a favorite thing about your work? What do you like? What do you like about videography the most?
Well, personally, from a Christian standpoint, I would say the power to create.
Mm.
Um, Videography is it's like creation within itself, right? How I see it, and how a non-videographer see it, or let's just say a client would literally say, hey, how much for a 30-second video? And I'll be like, that's the wrong question to ask. It's like you go into a bakery and you're gonna get married and you say, how much for a wedding cake? How much layers are the wedding cake? Which flavors? How tall is it? You know, like you gotta package it together and then I'll give you a price. So creating that piece with lighting and composition and doing the pre-production work, post-production work, which is editing. And like your friend earlier, composing, film composing is something huge. And I thought he was going to touch on that also. But on a set, you can have set as small as one person to about 1,000 people just doing stuff just to create this one film. You know, so the best part about doing film is the creation process itself. It gets you to think, how can I do this and how can I let the viewers know why I'm doing this thing?
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. So that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, a lot will be.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm kind of debating where I should go here. Could you describe one of your favorite projects that you've worked on?
Mm.
Why it was your favorite project?
My favorite project. Wow. I would say Undying Love. I don't know if you saw that video by Tag TAG, which is Niche. Um, she sung it, she wrote and sang the song for her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And she called me just in the right time when I wanted to practice my coloring skills and lighting skills. So that's actually one of my favorite video because soon as we released it, like it got so much hits, and I had pleasure in doing it. And one thing with Niche and her husband, they just come to me with a song and say, create the video. Like
Mm. Hard plans. Do it.
that's yeah, just and they trust me to that point where hey Manny, we have the song, create the video. And sometimes they throw in their concept and I mesh it with mine. But I would say Undying Love because I feel like it was the video that transitioned me from being a rookie
Mhm.
to now to where I am now professionally.
You know, I have to look it up, right?
Yeah,
I'll come back to that later. Um, but oh, I found it. I will put it in the chat if we have time. We can look at
right.
it. I'm sure you wouldn't mind.
No, no problem.
Okay, that's great. I kind of need to get on with the next question so we can, because I'm sure some people are going to have questions for you, and I don't want to hold up that process. But I think we're going to close out, with kind of the the crux of what it is that we're doing here at Testify. I believe that every single person on earth was created to testify about who God is. His power is evident in our bodies, in our talents,
Mhm.
in our connections, even. And so, well, I said talents, but yes, in our talents. So, how do you, as I was about to say composer, you're not a composer, well, you're a visual composer, um, a video composer. How do you see videography in the church? What do you think is the role of videography in what you do as a believer?
Mhm. Well, videography, gee, wow, it's a big question. The role of videography is so huge. Like it impacts everything, it impacts everything. And it is the medium for every language, right? So you have a lot of people who don't have the ability to read with understanding. Let's go with the Bible. You got some people who could read the story of Moses all their life, but when they watch it, they be like, "Was that in the Bible?" Yes, it was. It was right there, because the visual, they reading it is not the same as seeing it. You can imagine seeing a sea part and people walking on dry land. Can you imagine seeing a cloud in the night and fire in the day leading people? Could you imagine those things? Could you imagine an invisible hand writing on the wall? You probably fall out. So so video in the church, I think, is very vital, and not only live streaming videos. I think that's very important also to get the message out there. But as Christians, I think media, let me put it as that, media is the best fight back for what the world is doing, because the world is taking advantage of media. So if the church don't take advantage of media, they're fighting the wrong battle. I'm telling you, they're fighting the wrong battle, because you need media to fight media, and the world is not afraid. They're not afraid to program your kids. They're not afraid to do whatever, but they tell you don't do it. They say, hey, don't superimpose yourself on people. You know what I mean? But hey, you watch the cartoons now, you watch anything, they're superimposing, they're using media, they're using the TikTok. So I think with visuals, we can do it too. You know what I mean? As Christians, why not? We can do it too. So that's how I feel. Visuals is very important for the church.
Yeah, it comes back to what we'd said earlier about the power of the image, I think. Way back, even the early church,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't that they were only in homes, meeting and praying. There was
Mm-hmm.
lots of art from the beginning, the early followers of Jesus. They were always
Right.
presenting, of course they didn't have video. Pretty sure
Mm-hmm.
they use it if they did, but
You
they
could imagine what they would have done if they had
I
video.
can't imagine what they would have done with
Uh,
video. I can't imagine. I actually think about it. I thought, like, what would the Apostle Paul do with a video with the camera? Oh wow, he go nuts. I think.
yep.
Yes. And so I think you're right. As Christians, I there really isn't any reason that I can see that we're not actually implementing these tools
Right.
which, have been created. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with creating a video. By all
Mhm.
means, do it and reach people for the honor and glory of God.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so another question, I forgot to ask David this, but I know sometimes, especially when I tend to be very busy, and so, but I do end up creating stuff myself, whether it's physical or sometimes with an instrument. And sometimes I realize that God is speaking to me through what I'm doing. I know
Right.
it's kind of a personal question, that's why I sent it in advance. But do you ever have any experience like that, and that God is like either talking to you in the things that you do, or he's talking through you in the things that you do?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think when I started working my 9 to 5, I had a manager who told me, and this when I started my walk with God. He said, when you do your work, because I always used to work, I always was a hard worker, but it reached a point where I started to complain and watch what others do and say, hey, why am I doing so much and they are just slacking off? And he told me, he pulled me aside, and he was a pastor, and he said, hey, Emmanuel, you're a great worker, but one thing I want you to do, work like you work unto the Lord. So, and that stayed with me. And I was like, okay. And that pulled me up the ranks in my job, that I became a manager in my job. And everyone I was watching was like, how he became a manager so fast? I took that advice. Like I stopped worrying about what you're doing, and I work like God was saying, good job. So even with my visuals, when I work and I do my visuals, do you know there's people who literally say, I cannot hire Emmanuel because his quality is too clean? Do you know I have people that say that?
Wow.
That I can see all the dimples and I can see everything. It's like, it's too real. I was like, wow, that's a great way to let me down. And yeah, so like I help people say, and they was like, trust me, your work is too good. So like, and then I have clients who be like, oh, I can't afford you, without even asking, like, what? I could be the $2 man who's just doing a good job. Ask me first, But sometimes people look at my visuals and they just assume a lot of stuff. I mean, some things are expensive, but it's just my work when I think about God. Like, so everything I do with my video, I think like, how can I please God within myself? I'm doing this. How can I make this visual look good and say, hey, Father, this is what I did today. You like it? And so I always think of those stuff when I just doing stuff for clients or for myself.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to end the questions there, but before we move into any of anybody else's questions, I want to play the video.
Train you for nothing at all. They can give me some diamonds and pearls, but the truth is you are worth so much more. Sweeter than honey, love of my world. When I said yes, I meant it for life. Even that cannot separate, boy. You know it. You got it for real. Butterflies all in my tummy, we ice skate around on this coldness of life. You are my warmness at night. Make me secure, you're my guy. 7 years strong, yeah, I know we gon' be alright. Okay. Baby, talking about you. Okay. Talking about you and me forever, baby. Talking about you and me forever, baby. Talking about you and me forever, baby. Crazy how I feel. to my cleft, the right to my left. They can't see your rivers, I capture your breath. Oh, baby, baby. Love of my life, we gon' win, we gon' ride. Every moment is fire. Oh, baby, oh. Catapult into my loving arms, our love is strong, we'll live along. You and me forever, baby, talking about you and me forever, baby, talking about you and me forever, baby. Talking about you and me forever, baby, talking about you and me forever, baby, talking about you and me forever, baby. I wouldn't trade you for nothing at all. I wouldn't trade you for nothing at all. I wouldn't trade you. Undying love, undying love.
All right. Wow, that was really cool. And now I'm starting to learn so much more about art and what people do with colors and various, I want to say textures, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm seeing all of that. You must have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun and stress.
It's okay. Like
Yeah,
they said, everybody needs stress.
yeah. Oh man.
Okay, well now I'm gonna open up the floor. If anybody has any questions for Emmanuel.
Hi, Glennies.
Hi.
I have a question. One thing you said that was interesting that really grabbed me was that the church don't use media the way the world does. And I thought that was so true. And I just wanted to know, how can the church use media? Which other ways do you think the church could use media? Because yes, the world bombards our children. It just bombards us with all sorts of stuff. How can the church use media to do the same thing? Other than
Um,
putting a message out there or live streaming a message, because I mean, I don't know if there are churches on TikTok. You know,
exactly, exactly. I glad you mentioned that. I think I don't want to speak boldly, but I just want to say it in a way so people could receive it. I think churches take a lot of soft approach, and that don't work. I think we should be confident in our God. You know what I mean? And you know, we walk on eggshells when we use the word offend, but the world don't care what you offend about. You know what I mean? And the truth will offend. Like I always give people this example. I say, you can imagine the best way you can tell somebody that your breath stink will offend them. The best way that you tell someone, hey, you need some mint, or think about the best way you can do it, that person will still feel some type of way. You know what I mean? And as the church, we take that approach, you know what I mean? And I'm glad how she mentioned without sending a message or something, that if you look, I love to study the Bible. If you look at the Bible and the system of the world right now, the system of the world take notes from the Bible. The court system comes from the Bible. The banking system comes from the Bible. You know what I mean? Like all those things come from the Bible. But I just feel that there's so much message to be told from the Bible. We stick to the normal way, and we don't want to be crafty or artsy, for the lack of a better term, on how we can deliver to people. So we just figure we could just preach and do a live stream, and just do a rerun of the Jesus thing, the Jesus crucified every day. Just do a different movie of that, a different movie of Paul, a different movie of Noah. Like, they was not the only people in the Bible. A different movie of Samson. We get it. There was lessons that was in the Bible that is very important for human living, not only spiritual, because we're three man. You know what I mean? We gotta feed the whole man. And I don't feel that the church, I don't want to use the word concern themselves with it, but I don't think the church sometimes like put that into perspective. That's what I would say. And you use TikTok. Come on, Satan using TikTok. Like I feel like we bound ourselves a lot to like, oh, social media is the devil. No. It don't work like that. Social media is the devil. There's one devil. How you use the thing, you know what I mean? You're the one who uses the thing. A police officer have a gun and a criminal have a gun. The gun is not the devil. I mean, so I don't know. It's how you use it. So I love that question.
Anybody else? The floor is open.
I have a question as well, Denise. Emmanuel, so good to hear your voice and see your creative work. I'm a pastor, but I'm also creative as well. And so thank you for being a part of Testify. Really enjoyed your input. And that visual with offending people with asking them, telling them with their bad breath. I think I'm gonna infuse that in a sermon. So. Offense. But the question I'm going to ask you is, what's next for you? Like, what are you working on creatively now? Is there a big project in the pipeline? What are you embracing next as far as creativity is concerned?
Education. We just founded our new studio in October 3rd of last year, Frame Studios, me and my partners. It's one of the largest studios in the Bahamas that hosts the very first cylindrical wall, and a cyc wall is basically a big white wall that looks like an infinity wall. So when you do video on it, it looks like it goes on forever. So we want to embark in education, because there are so many kids that want to pick up the camera to do photography, and so many kids want to do videography, but not a lot of people have access to $60,000 to go to school, and that's not housing yet, and then that's not food, and that's not having fun. And I know the burden of that, because I wanted to go to school. I had scholarship, but film school don't take sports scholarship. I was just good at track. So you have to have the cash or get lucky to go to a community college. But I didn't have that access or luxury. But education in the craft is what I'm really focused on right now, because I think we need it, and we can help the future with it.
Thanks so much. More power to you, and continue to stay creative.
I appreciate you, Boston.
Okay. And I think it's interesting that you say that about education, because I noticed that David said it too. Oh, sorry.
Good evening, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Emmanuel. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. As a young entrepreneur, what sort of advice would you give some other young persons trying to get in that field as a videographer?
Well, what gave me the boldness to do it was my wife. She told me just to reach out. I was very timid to reach out to people. I always used to answer for people. So I'd be like, ain't no way this guy gonna take me on. He can say no. And she was like, reach out. Why are you answering for the person? And I reach out, and the guy was like, okay, come. I was like, so I would say reach out. A lot of time we think we have to do it on our own. In this day and time, it's easier now to go into entrepreneurship, especially in the Bahamas, because small business is the backbone of the Bahamas. Don't care what nobody say. Small business is the backbone of the Bahamas. The government cannot support everybody. Atlantis cannot support everybody. Bahama cannot support everybody. It's the people who opening up convenience stores, who being a photographer, who doing videography, and providing for their family, is the ones that really taking the slack off of the government and all that. So I would tell the young people who want to venture into entrepreneurship, just reach out and ask for help. Just ask for help.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Anybody else? Before I go on. Okay. But I'm just gonna go back to what I was saying. I noticed that both you and David, mentioned the need to bring up people behind you.
Yes.
And I think that was so beautiful, because usually you hear older people saying that, people who are in their 50s and their 60s, but both of you are under the age of 40. So I think that's, I personally think that's one of the most beautiful things I've heard in this episode of Testify. And so I'm really appreciative, even though I'm not a videographer. You saw my horrific cut work with with the previous video. But yes, I'm really proud of you and David for reaching back, and even
Yes.
at this point in time, bringing up the people who are younger than you and less experienced than you. I think that's probably one of those gifts of love. It says love is something that you give away. Kevan,
Right.
no, Kevan says 50 and 60-year-olds are not old. I did not. I said older, right? I'm sorry. I do apologize if I offended somebody, but yes, now I can't remember what I was going to say. But yes, it's important. Oh yeah, I was saying that love is something that you give away, and when you love something, you give it away, right?
Yeah, you want it to continue to live on, right?
Right.
And it's a race, right? And I always love the illustration of the race in the Bible. And I look at it as a relay. You have to pass the baton. You have to. You don't have to do the race on your own. Pass the baton. If you hold on to the baton, you'll be disqualified. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus continued his mission for 3 years on earth. And when he did it, he came back to life, spent 40 more days just to teach them how to run this race and say, listen, I will not leave you alone. I will bring you a confidant, and then you will have the mission to go and do it. I mean, this God we're talking about, who can do it on his own. He do not need us, you know what I mean, per se. But he say, nah, I'm going to let my kids kick Satan butt, you know what I mean? So he give us the liberty and the freedom to get a piece of this fighting. And that's how I look at the Bible. It's like an action hero Bible. And that's what visual is again. Some people look at the Bible as rules and laws and all this stuff. No, it's somebody who love you, and they didn't take it like hard to say, hey, let me become like you to help you become like me. So it's visual. That's what visual does. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So it's almost 8:30. I can't believe it. The time has gone so quickly, and we're pretty much at an end. So if anybody has any last questions or anything in general that they'd like to say, that their main takeaway from today, now is the time to do so before we call it quits. Okay. By the way, maybe what you can do is leave if anybody here wants to contact you later, would you mind leaving your contact information in the chat? Or
How do I
I
do
guess
that?
there's a chat button at the bottom of the screen. Or you can also give it to me, and they can contact Pastor Dwight or something like that, because I'm
Oh.
Yeah, let an old man help you. There's a chat button in the bottom. You can type it in the chat. Now, let me just say, excellent testify tonight, both presenters, and Emmanuel, very, very informative. And I think what I took away mostly is that both presenters are maximizing the talents that God has given them for the kingdom of God, and to the utmost perfection, with professionalism. So I really enjoyed it this evening, and all the best to both of you all.
Appreciate you.
Yes, good. Well, I think we will call it a night. So Pastor Dwight, do you have any closing remarks, announcements, or anything like that?
No, just a wonderful night. And it was very interesting because I listened really intently to David and I listened to Emmanuel. And what is so interesting is like their creativity comes out in their personality. David is, and while he's a classical pianist, he's a composer. And if you just close your eyes and listen to him, you almost feel that element of classical pianist.
Yeah.
Then when you listen to Emmanuel, it's the same thing. Like he's very visual, even in his speech. He talks about the Bible being like an action hero element to it, and so it's just so interesting how God, in His infinite wisdom, deposited in each of us this element of creativity. And I think I take away one of the things David talked about as well is like the church giving expression to all of it. Not just selling out to one genre or just, making it so commercial that it squeezes out an appreciation for all, and so I'm thankful. I'm thankful tonight. We had a wonderful night. And so I say blessings on you too, Glennies, as you continue to forge ahead and creating this platform for us as a church, and then bringing on this diverse element of guests that kind of just leaves us on the edge every time we're coming. So more power to you as well in your creative feel as well. And I trust that this would have also stimulated you, Glennies, to write a song. So you can't sit in this sea of creativity and not produce something. We appreciate the beads and the earrings and all the other stuff you're creating. But I would love to hear not just a cover, but a song that came from Glennies.
I have a couple. I just
good. Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm gonna push you. I'm pushing you. But thank you again, David and Emmanuel, for being a part of the exchange tonight, and everybody who joined us. Next month, let's really get some more people involved and send a note out, encourage somebody to be a part of Testify. It's a wonderful experience. And so I speak blessings and favor on you, Glennies, for the part you play, and to our guests as well. May God forever bless you, and may His grace be with you as you stay creative. That's my last words.
Okay. Well, thank you, Pastor Dwight. I appreciate that. And with that, we are closing out another Testify. Thank you so much for coming. Feel free to join us again on Zoom next month. That is my aim, next month. And if you have a talent that you want to share, remember, Testify isn't just for people who do this as a profession. It's for anybody, because the name of the program is, we all were built to testify to the glory of God through who we are as people and what we do. So you can testify any way you want, and we invite you to do so here in our space. So with that, God bless you all and have a very good evening, and don't forget to testify. Oh, I stopped this recording now. Stop the recording.
Bye, guys. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Have a great night, everybody. Awesome show.